Ben Golub is the CEO of Storj Labs, a leader in blockchain-based cloud storage. Ben has been in 8 startups for a CEO, including Plaxo, Gluster, Docker, and now Storj. Ben is a respected figure in the blockchain community, speaking at conferences and events around the world. Ben holds a bachelor's degree in economics from Princeton University and master's MBA from Harvard University. There's a lot to unpack, very little time. Welcome, Ben. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, my pleasure. It's great to be here.
Okay, so you are speaking with us here from Palo Alto. Is that where you grew up?
So I grew up pretty close to here in Cupertino, which people may know as the birthplace of Apple Computer and a few other things. My first Silicon Valley job was harvesting apricots in an orchard, but
really?
But that orchard was then paved over and is now Apple headquarters and a bunch of other things.
Oh, that's where the Apple headquarters is now? Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Did you grow up
Apple is far more profitable than the apricot.
Did you grow up in an entrepreneurial family?
Yeah. So my dad was a physicist who actually he worked on the Hubble telescope and Voyager and a bunch of things like that.
No way.
And my mom was one of the first women in high tech, so she worked for a number of different high-tech startups, some of which you've heard of, some of which you haven't. But
and was that in their dinner table? Was it very common to just hear them share their stories from work and all of that?
Absolutely, yeah. And so my mom was working on the early ultrasound technology and stuff like that, right?
Wow.
And,
so did you
servers? Yeah.
Did you study? I know you did Princeton and then double masters in Harvard. Did you study engineering? Was that your?
No, I mean I took computer science courses, right? But I was always more geared towards public policy and economics and things like that, and business. I think I'm better at thinking about technology than I am actually producing it, and
okay,
well, enough to be dangerous, but not enough to make something that works. So.
Well, you've had quite a journey with a number of amazing startups and software companies. So I wanna cover a little bit of your time at Plaxo, which was known for pioneering the smart address book. Is this the same Plaxo that was founded by Sean Parker and two
yes, it was. Yeah.
This was founded by Sean Parker, 2 other founders, and he was then let go. And then afterwards, that's when he famously got to meet Zuckerberg and Facebook and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
But and Plaxo was eventually acquired by Comcast. So how did you come across Plaxo?
Sure. Well, so I mean, I'd spent several years before that, sort of, I guess, Web 1.0 at VeriSign. So I was running various different groups at VeriSign, which at the time was a pioneering idea that you could pay for something with a credit card over the internet or make things happen securely over the internet. So that was sort of where I started. I ran a number of different business units for them, sort of early days through IPO and things like that. And then I was ready to start to run something of my own, and the team at Plaxo, which was really, it was really sort of an early days of social networking, right? And they had their approach, and Sean Parker had left before I got there, and the other 2 founders stayed, and we built, I thought, a great company, and it grew. We ultimately sold it because a lot of what we were really good at doing was sort of cross-platform work, which was really important in sort of the evolution of how you consume media, ultimately sort of do streaming and things like that. So that was the Plaxo story, and that was probably I've spent more time in infrastructure than I have in consumer tech. That was probably the closest I ever got to consumer tech, and then almost everything else has been sort of some version of Web 1 to Web 2, now to Web 3, and going from the world being highly centralized, running on known big servers, to doing anything anymore.
And I know so we mentioned that Comcast acquired Plaxo. Was Comcast originally a customer of Plaxo,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
and how long was it a customer? I love the acquisition journeys and stories,
Yeah.
and how they evolved. And so with Comcast, how long was it a customer before it actually began sending out signals that it was interested in acquisition? How that
Oh,
happened?
it was probably about a year and a half that they were a customer, right? And again, what they were trying to do is they were saying, hey, we really don't want to be a cable company, right? We want to be a new media company, and we recognize that their customers were not just going to be sitting in front of a device in the living room anymore. They were going to be doing things on mobile and on computers, and they knew that streaming was going to be there. Netflix was just getting started, and I think that we all sort of said, hey, this can be a lot bigger. And so Plaxo ended up being sort of the heart of an innovation group at what's now Xfinity.
You were there along for that journey when you began having those conversations, and even throughout the acquisition? And
Yeah.
what advice would you give founders who might be beginning to receive signals from a customer, in terms of
Yeah. That's it.
acquisition? Are there things that now, looking back, you say, oh, okay, I learned so much, and here are a couple red flags to keep in mind. Here are things to
Yeah. I mean, so I've had two companies that have been acquired, and have also acquired companies. I think that probably the number one thing is, make sure it's a win-win. And if you view it as a transaction, then it's not going to work. It probably will never even happen, right? And I think the other thing, just in general, for any acquisition, a lot of acquisitions don't end up working out well, right? Is you've got to be really clear on why 1 + 1 = 5. And both sides have to be kind of clear on that, right? And then I think that if you, as there's always a question, I think, for entrepreneurs, if they get these signals, or do I want to go independent, or do I want to sell? And that's not an easy question to answer. There are lots of stories of people who didn't sell and turned out to be the right thing, and a lot more probably that didn't sell and turned out to be the wrong thing, but you never hear about them, right? And so,
right. Exactly.
I think as an entrepreneur, you have to, you sort of have to constantly have both optimism and belief in what you're doing, and also realism to say that there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and things that are completely outside of your control, like the world economy and things like that.
How did you, because I've seen this before, where it's a balancing act. It's a bit of a dance where a company shows that it's interested, but at the same time, you don't know how much to reveal, or how much, like there's this dance between the company wanting to know as much as possible in terms of the technology, in terms of its capabilities, seeing possibly if they might go the route of replicating it, right? Because they have many options, the bigger companies. How did you go through that dance? Were there certain things that throughout that journey that you said, okay, maybe I would have done this a little bit different, or
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I guess I would say that I think that any strategy that depends on something being secret is not a good strategy. Like if the only thing that makes you work is that nobody knows about you, that's
doesn't
it doesn't work, right? I mean, so your moat or your competitive advantage has to be built on something else, and it certainly has to be some combination of you're doing something really unique and different, and the technology is difficult, right? And or you've got like unique set of customers or things like that. What I would do differently, I think in all cases, I think you always have, you can't plan on a exit, right? You sort of have to, you don't build great companies by running for the exit. You build great companies by building great companies. And then along the way, you have opportunities to exit, and you have to decide whether they're the right one or the wrong one. It's a really bad thing if you're desperate and your only option is to be sold. Then that's not good. That's not good.
So when you're entering those conversations, you should still keep that same mindset, which is the reason that you're in that conversation in the first place, which is of continuing to execute and building out what you have. Okay, that makes
right. And you know, I think the other thing to keep in mind is the acquirer. I'm trying to think of the right way to put this. They want to know that you care about them too, right? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, you know, make the mistake of saying, "Okay, I'm going to be a hard negotiator, and I'm going to find 20 other people and convey that, you know, all I really care about is the
ticket price."
And that's going to send them away, right? You know, and so you know, I think, you know, you know, I think sometimes I try for us to take the perspective of the buyer, but you know, you have to believe that yeah, you can actually add value to the buyer and be dedicated and be honest with the buyer that says, okay, you know, if we're part of you, we're going to dedicate ourselves as strongly as we were beforehand because we honestly believe we can do something better together than we can apart.
Got it.
And if you don't believe that, it'll show, right? And so synergies have to be there, and both parties have to agree to it. And you know, it can be, you know, technology. It can be, you know, they need your technology. It could be that, you know, you've figured out how to attack a market that they haven't attacked. You know, synergy should not be, oh, we can cut 10% of your headcount because we already have a finance department or something. Right. Once we, you know, yeah, and that's, yeah, where I, you know, fortunately I haven't seen that in the actions I've done, but you know, a lot of acquisitions, it's stupid, right? You have like one group at the acquirer that is involved in doing the deal, and they walk away, and then they hand it over to some other group who believe that the most important thing to do for the next 6 months is to, you know, get everybody onto their HR systems or something. Right. Silly. That doesn't really help anybody. So
after Plaxo, you moved on to be CEO at Gluster.
Right.
An open storage software platform that was acquired by Red Hat. How big was the team at Gluster when you joined? Had it already found a product market fit?
No, I tend to come into places where they have like the first version of the product working, but then they haven't found product market fit, and they generally have to build out sales or and that's kind of where I mean I in general would rather build things than rebuild things. So you know, I don't like coming into a company where like the first thing I have to do is like hire a new sales team, or you know, or you know, fire half the customers because they're the wrong fit, right? I mean, I'd rather come in and say, okay, yeah, this is working now. You've proven the prototype is working. Now let's go build a great market, right?
So you're sold. You're sold on that product, and you join in. And so in this case with Gluster, what did that experience look like when
well, I mean, it was I think it was 13 people, 14 people. With you know, amazing founders, and with a vision of what storage should be that was very different from what anybody else was doing at the time. And you'll probably hear some analogies to what storage is doing, right? But you know, at the time that Gluster was getting going, it was all storage was sold as big boxes, and if you wanted more capacity, you bought a bigger box, and if you wanted more reliable storage, you bought an even bigger, more expensive box. And you want faster storage, you do the same thing, right? And what Gluster was saying is, no, that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to, you know, tie together a lot of little boxes and use math to make them faster and more durable and higher capacity and all these things and more secure. And storage, if you will, is that, except on steroids, because you know, you don't even own the boxes, right? The boxes are
but yeah, so
but you know, yeah. So I think Gluster, you know, great founder, great small team.
What were the biggest challenges when you joined in? I mean, it seemed like it's still very early on, right? They were figuring out who the exact customer, the fit. What were your, you know, that first year, what did that look like for you? What were some of your biggest priorities when you jumped in?
Yeah, so I think what I sort of first 60 days at any new company that I come into is generally making sure that like we're all on the same page about like what are the values of the company and what's the mission of the company. And I like to set a 5-year strategy, even though we're going to be wrong, right? At least have everybody point in the same direction and say, okay, our view of the world is if I were to, Gluster, these are the things we care about. And we're going to be, open source, software only approach to storage that's going to be geared at the following markets and sold in the following way. And we might be wrong, right? But it's better to sort of say you're channel led or you're direct led. It's better to say whether you're open source or not open source. It's better to say whether you're going after small companies or mid-sized companies or large companies, right? I mean, all those sort of things are critical to get right. And I think you want to sort of be consistent. So you have everybody running in the same direction and hopefully you pick the right direction. But if you haven't, at least you find out soon that it's not the right direction. The worst is, you run in 10 different directions and a year later you say, well, we're not going anywhere, but we have no idea if the direction is wrong or if the issues that we've just spread ourselves within.
When you come in, are you constantly looking for what's the data we have, and is that something that always seems to be every startup that you joined? Was there always a lack or disorganization of that, of like, well, we kind of have an idea, here's some of the here's some of the channels we think, but like these are a bit of the what do you look for?
You always have imperfect information, and I think most founders, especially engineers, want running a company to be like solving an algebra problem. It's like and it's not and you hear a lot of people talking about dashboards, and dashboards are really important, but you don't drive a car by just looking at the dashboard.
Right.
So it's this sort of uncomfortable mix of saying, okay, there's certain things we know and there's certain things we don't know, but we at least have to sort of pick a direction. And
in signing up those first customers, you mentioned, I mean, Gluster at this stage already had a couple of customers.
Yeah, they had a couple of customers, who weren't paying a lot of money, but had sort of, and I think you like to see that people are putting your product through the paces. And Gluster was open source, storage is open source, Docker mega open source, right? And I think that is great because you want to have a lot more eyes on your product than you have, right? And you want to have people who are keeping you honest. But that's probably why I think open source is really valuable, right? You get less people running you through your paces. The problem is that sometimes people who are in open source are not the people who are going to pay you. And so,
that's hard.
That's hard. You got to listen to them. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned Docker. So after Gluster, you joined Docker, and as a CEO, Docker helps developers work and deploy their software web applications faster by not having to do a lot of the tedious IT tasks like operating systems and libraries and platforms. At Docker, when you joined, was it a similar story where it was fairly early on?
It was 12 people, I think, with a great idea. They were jettisoning an old business, which was a sort of a PaaS business, a platform as a service business, and trying to create this new idea called a software container. And, again, brilliant founder, great small team. They had a vision. I joined, I think, 2 weeks after they released version 0.1 of what was Docker.
Wow.
And, and then it sort of blew up in a great way, right, in sort of open source terms. And then we started getting lots of users and then getting customers, right? So that was sort of the fastest growing company I'd been part of.
Who were the first customers? I know, was it mostly enterprise, or where did it begin?
Well, it was weird because it took off first among developers, right, of all shapes and sizes, right? And then we sort of had, two paths for monetization. One is selling to enterprises for sort of running and deploying applications that were in Docker containers. And then there was also, giving tools to developers to do it better, faster. And it actually turned out that, in the long run, it was the developers that ended up monetizing, not the enterprises. And the company now is doing great and is like a $3 billion company, something like that, right? And, I made a lot of mistakes along the way.
Yeah,
As well.
what are some, what are some that come to mind where you say, well, we originally thought this, we tried that. In hindsight, what are some of the things that you say, oh, I would have loved to,
Yeah, I
have
mean, I think one of the things that I think a lot of startups mistake is that they, if they're going in a market where there are big incumbents, they think that the incumbents are out to get them, and they're not. The incumbents are fighting each other. Yeah, there's this old saying, when elephants fight, grass gets trampled. And so
and
but a lot of people's, but you can sort of use that to your advantage, and you can say, okay, well, if I am a product that is, Comcast did not care about Plaxo as Plaxo. They cared about, well, what can they do to compete with Verizon and others like that, right? And I think in the Docker case, it was, what could we mean to the different cloud companies and the different on-premise companies, and we ended up sort of revolutionizing computing in many ways. That sets up some really complicated dynamics, and so I think you just have to be prepared for that, if you're really successful. But I would say almost everybody who's in the decentralized space is probably trying to disrupt some large set of incumbents, and I think should recognize that those incumbents can be allies or competitors. But
and you mentioned that there were two routes. You had the developers, and then you had the enterprise, and then eventually the developers route was the one that actually monetized better than the enterprise. For enterprise, there are a number of founders, obviously, within the Techstars alumni community, that first time they have a product that works, it's great, and they're having these conversations with enterprise. What has been your experience with enterprise? What are some advice that you can think about, or best practices when it comes to picking up an enterprise customer? What should you be aware of?
Sure. I mean, a few lessons, I think, if you're trying to sell into the enterprise. One is, in an ideal world, you aren't going after a market of one. And sort of an anti-pattern is you have one huge enterprise customer who wants constant modifications to what you have. You customize it. You think they're going to spend a lot of money with you, and they don't, right? Or you think you're working with that enterprise, and really what you're working with is somebody who's in their innovation team who isn't actually able to write checks and things like that. That's an anti-pattern. In the ideal world, you create something for the enterprise that can be adopted by most enterprises, at least within some field, and you want something that's repeatable. And often that means you end up going after, mid-size or small enterprises first rather than large enterprises. And that's generally a better route. I guess the other thing, and unfortunately, these days in the world of cloud, there are a lot fewer small and mid-sized companies that will work with an enterprise, enterprise technology. They just sort of want to get everything from an Amazon. And so I'm not saying it's easy, right? But focus. And I think the problem with a lot of founders is they're really bright and they can keep a lot of things in their head at once, and they don't realize that an organization can't. An organization can do things in its collective head at once, and maybe.
Is that the route you found yourself taking when it was mid-size first, and then eventually that led to?
Yeah. I mean, and usually you sort of, you get sort of small, mid-size, repeatable revenue, and then you earn the right to go upscale. And if you're going to go upscale, you generally want to have partners to do that rather than do it yourself, right? Because large enterprises don't buy from startups; they buy from people that they know. So you want to have partners who are excited to work with you, who have been working with the enterprise buyers for 20 years and have a solution, right? And can deal with.
I was going to ask you about partnerships and distribution.
Yeah.
How did that look like for Docker?
Well, for Docker, what was both great and horrible, right? Most things double-edged sword. We were so aggressively open source, and we had such an active community that we ended up being like integrated in tons and tons and tons of products by big and small companies alike, where we almost had no work to do. I mean, we had to maintain the community, but like, they would do the integrations themselves. And then our challenge was, well, how do we come up with a business model that helps both, right? But yeah, I think we ended up doing is we ended up having, good partnerships who were trying to go into the enterprise, and we were a way for them to do that. But all that customization was done by the partners, not by us, because we couldn't be the customizers. You can't be a custom shop with 30 people.
What would you say was one or two wins that come to mind during that experience at Docker, where you said we did a number of things that were scrappy or didn't go the direction we wanted to, but this and this, we did that right. Like we
Yeah, so I would say with Docker in particular, and again, they're amazing company, amazing people, right? So when we talking about it's more the team than me, but I think we did a really good job of building a community that loved us. And at its height, 90% of the contributors to the code did not work for the company. And wow. At least, half of all contributions to the code were not in the company, right? And we had an amazing set of people who were running meetups for us and companies that were talking about us. And so I think what we did really well is we built a great group of people who made the company larger than in itself. And then maybe if I would say, what did we not do well? I don't know that we found the right balance between supporting that community and also finding ways to control our economic destiny. But yeah.
I was just gonna say, for building that community, were there certain initiatives, were there certain things that you said, wow, the minute we launched this particular initiative, it really
yeah. I mean, there were a lot of things that we did. I mean, first of all, we sort of said, hey, marketing should be all about use cases. And it's user-generated use cases, and our marketing should really be about finding people who are doing cool things with our technology and giving them social media love and promoting the heck out of them, right? And inevitably, it was better to have somebody write an article about, here's something cool that I did with Docker, and here's what I love, and here's what I really hate, and I wish they'd fix it. And that was great. That's much better than us writing, here's everything that's wonderful about Docker.
I love that. That makes a ton of sense. So
a ton of sense, right? But then you have to be comfortable with the fact that some people are going to say, this is crap, and why don't they fix this?
That's funny.
But then so I think we did that, and we a whole bunch of things that I think ended up making it a really powerful tool. And then
I love that. What's another one? So use cases.
Use case marketing, I think if it works is the best. What are some other things that I think we did? We had a fun logo, right? Because people, I think even in enterprise, people want to have an emotional connection with what you're doing, right?
So visually,
right? Having another geometric cool thing is not as good as having a cute whale, right? Even though PETA got after us about the whale, we did have to deal with.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they said, how come your whale is carrying containers on its back? That's cruel. And do you know how many whales are killed in encounters?
Oh, no!
It's a cartoon whale, and our containers are made out of electrons, right? It's whatever.
Wow!
But, you just move on. So yeah, I think we did that well. I think we we embraced a wide set of community. I think we got good at giving away control. And that's a constant battle on something we did right, something we didn't do right. And I try to take the lessons on Storj, and I think Storj, I'm really excited about what we've done and built something great. It's been a slower path, than Docker, but I think what we're building is really meaningful and you
Well,
know,
let's do that. Let's talk about
Yeah.
your journey at Storj, at your current company, the leader of decentralized cloud storage. So let's start off with who are Storj's customers and what problem are you solving for them?
Okay, well, so I will start by showing you something that you probably recognize.
Let me see. It's a little blurry. Is that a CD?
That is a CD.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a CD, and it's about 1 millimeter thick. It could hold the entire contents of the Library of Congress. The world created 163 zettabytes of data this past year. And so if you tried to store it on these, which are 1 millimeter thick, you'd have a stack that would go to the orbit of Mars and part of the way back.
Whoa.
And it's going to be 23% bigger next year. So the world is creating lots and lots.
23% bigger next year.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. So it's always good to be in a market that is big and growing. Most of that data is created, consumed, analyzed at the edge, not in the center. And then the other thing that has sort of blew my mind is that even though the amount of data is growing, the typical drive on this planet is less than 20% full. So storage drive.
I could see that. I can actually see less than 20% full. So even though it has all this capacity, wow,
it's not being used, right? And so you could fill up those drives without buying any new drives, any more cooling, any more people, or even much additional electricity, right? To run a drive at 80% full takes almost no additional electricity than running at 20% full. It costs nothing else, right? So if you could somehow take this notion, that Airbnb popularized, or Uber popularized. Uber is the largest taxi company. Airbnb is the largest hotel company, but they don't own a single hotel room. So we sort of said, can we do that with every drive on the planet? Can you somehow tie them together into one big storage cloud and make it, radically cheaper, but also radically faster, radically more secure, radically more durable? And it took us about 3.5 years to actually make that work, but we did it, and now we're out selling it. But so basically, for a huge range of use cases, storage as a way to store data is 1/10 the price of the competitors, 1/10 the carbon footprint, and 2 to 3 times faster, and more secure and more durable, and all these other good things, right? So,
and for which customers were the first ones that signed up? Like, who are you targeting first?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you about some of our customers that are fun. So one is this company called God Behind Bars, and most people worry about there being sort of criminals in their customer base, and we actually have one of our biggest customers is trying to reform criminals, so they really? Make videos for prisoners. They have a captive audience, but it's how to how to turn your life around, or how to get off drugs, or how to fix your relationships with people on the outside, whatever. And they stream that data in, and so we basically become like a video platform for them, right? They store video on us, and that video can stream quickly anywhere in the world, securely, cheaply, stuff like that, right? And so we have a lot of other. We have
and these are. It sounds like are these small? Are we talking about small, mid-size companies?
Videos?
Yeah.
Yeah. So most of our customers are small and mid-sized, but they have a lot of data, right? So that's one customer that we love. Another customer we love is University of Edinburgh, and they're a research institution. They do a lot of physics work. So I think I said my dad was a physicist. So they're doing work like with the big particle accelerators, right? So they generate petabytes of data of a scientific nature that they want to share with other research institutions around the UK and around the world. And we're the best way for them to do that. That's fast, that's durable. And they're part of a consortium that includes another university that's working on genomic data, and another one that's working on cosmology data. And they're all using us because it's sort of this problem that is pretty universal, where people have big files that they want to get around the world. And that could be a video, that could be research data, that could be an AI learning set, whatever.
And how's the business model work? So how are you charging?
Okay, yeah. So we charge our customers based off of, how many terabytes they store per month and how many terabytes they serve. And then our suppliers who are renting out spare space get paid based off of how many terabytes
Right,
they
that's the
store and how many.
Airbnb,
It's
the
like an
host.
Airbnb model, right? And obviously we charge our customers more than we pay our suppliers, right? But we've figured out how to make this work so that it's profitable for our suppliers, it's profitable for us, and the customers end up paying 1/10, 1/20th what they would pay Amazon.
Well,
Or
did you ever have to pivot at all from that original business model or pricing or
yeah. I mean, and I know it's a not a full pivot, right? But I think when the company was started by Sean Wilkinson in his dorm room at Morehouse College, I think he was envisioning a consumer backup company. And we have moved away from being a consumer backup company. We're a, enterprise storage company, like we're enterprise grade storage company. And now we actually have big enterprises who are coming to us, right? I mean, we sort of started small and moved our way up, but I think that what we said is, to make this valuable, we have to deliver something that is like never loses a file, is faster than the cloud providers, is more secure, is more durable, all those good things, right? You have to be, I think if you're going to be an innovator, you have to be like radically better and radically different.
and driving awareness, we were covering this before with the previous company, but driving awareness of a product is vital. What have you done so far? What channels? What has been successful for you? What has helped?
Yeah. I mean, and I'll be cautious to say this is not an experiment that's done, right? I think that what we are trying to do is also sort of somewhat similar to Docker, right? Is, let's have our customers be our best storytellers. Let's make them successful.
So use case, you're going after that use case marketing as well.
Use case marketing as well, right? And I think that's just the best way to do it, right? And some of our use cases are boring and they don't get written about, like backups. Nobody wants to write about backups, but they like to write about video. They like to write about artificial intelligence use cases. They like to, they like to work, write about solving fundamental questions of the universe, storage itself is not the most sexy thing in the world, but what people do with that data is really exciting. And
that's incredible. How long have you been in operation so far?
So the company sort of again started in a dorm room like 2015, 2016. I came on board mid 2018. We kind of rebuilt everything from the ground up to be enterprise grade. Enterprise grade product has been in market since mid 2021, and so, first 2 years really, from mid 21 to mid 23 is, getting those early customers, making them successful, early lighthouse partners. And now it's starting to like take off. So it's like that exciting phase, but yeah, some things take longer than others, right? And I think that, maybe another piece of advice. I think Bill Gates says people always overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can achieve in 10 years. So you sort of have to have the patience to say, let's build a strong foundation and let's build a great, keep our costs low, right, while we're growing, right? But
so how do you do that? So how do you balance a the short-term goals and long-term vision in the strategic making process for the company, right? Like, because I've seen so far, you come in, you figure out, is the direction the right direction? Are we missing something that we hadn't previously asked ourselves or thought about? And then let's execute. How do you balance that? How do you balance those short-term goals?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, what I like to do is sort of, come in and again, in the first 60 days or whatever, like say, okay, what are our values and what's our mission? And that hopefully never changes, right? That should be good for 10 years, then, where do we want to be in 5 years? And let's try and be as specific we can about, who are the customers and what's our differentiator and what's our value proposition and, how much we want to be making. And then what do we want to do for the next 3 years to get on that path? And then what do we need to do on the next year to get on that path? And then, okay, well, if that's what we need to get to this year, then what are the specific milestones we're going to hit, right? And not that the stuff that you're thinking about 3 to 5 years ago is accurate, but at least it's consistent, right? So you sort of have a point of view of where you're supposed to go.
Right.
And, and then you're kind of ruthless about what's important, what's not important for the next 3 months or the next year. And, you have the discipline to say, okay, well, are we doing what we said we're going to do? And B, is that working? Is that moving us towards where we want to be in a year? And and I don't know, there's anything sort of written in stone, but I think that having that culture of always looking into the future and yet also looking at where you're going right now is good, right? And if you do only the one, right, you're going to spend years building castles in the air, and that's no good. And if you only focus on the short term, then you can be running really fast in a million directions and go nowhere, right? So.
Ben, when you join and when you've led these companies, who's usually like the first hire? Even what role really complements what you bring to the equation, right? Like when you go in there, what's a role that you're like, all right, definitely gotta make sure that I have the most talented person filling this, because this is what I believe one of the most crucial,
Yeah. I mean, so I guess I'd first say I almost never hire somebody for the first 6 months because I really want to understand the team and who they're good at and what they're good at, right? And then what I think you want to do is you want to say, well, what DNA is in the company and what DNA is missing? And it might be that what you're missing is, an execution-oriented engineering leader, in which case that's what you want to hire, right? We might say, hey, what we're missing is we're missing somebody who knows how to market. Or we might be missing a, we don't have enough people over the age of 30, or we don't have enough people under the age of 30, right?
Right.
And I think, a big problem most startups make is they mistake their starting team for culture, right? And they'll say, oh, we have a great culture because all of us were together in the dorm rooms at XYZ college and we all hang out together, we all work together, and that's great. And what they're really saying is, well, we're small, and that's our culture. Our culture is being small and being the founding team, and that's that doesn't last past a certain size.
I love that. I love understanding the differentiation of what culture is, right? From that early moment to as it evolves.
Yeah, and then that ends up having lots of other unintended consequences. Like, okay, you wake up 2 years later and everybody is the same age and they're all same ethnicity, same
right
background, right? And there's no diversity at all, and that's not what your customers look like, and that's not what the world looks like, and that's a bad place to be, right? So yeah, it's messier and harder to have a diverse team, but it ends up being better in the long run.
This is always crucial. I mean, for every profession out there, but just within the context of leading a technology company and leading teams, in terms of prioritizing and managing time effectively, are there things that you've taken up that have been really helpful for you? Is there a certain
in my personal life, or
no, for work? When it comes to prioritizing and managing time effectively, are there certain things that you apply within your everyday at work that has been useful, that has been helpful?
Yeah. I mean, I think structuring your day so that you have some uninterrupted blocks of time is really important. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is, I sort of tell people, often what makes you successful at one stage hurts you at another stage, right? And so most early founders, right, they do everything, and that's part of what makes them successful is they care about every detail and they do everything, and that ends up being counterproductive at a certain point. And so you sort of have to be willing to let organizations grow and make mistakes. I have three
Makes
kids, right?
sense.
And,
Makes sense.
I have
At
three
some
kids, and I
point,
sort of
you got
yeah.
to delegate and you got to hand it off, and you got to focus on your strengths.
Focus on your strengths and understand that other people have strengths, and sometimes people, maybe if you did something, you could do it better, but you don't. You only have 2% of your time that you could put towards it, so it's not going to be better, and then the organization is not going to learn. And like I say, I have three kids, and I learned very quickly that when you have a little kid and you're trying to teach them how to ride a bicycle, they have to fall, and you have to let them fall, right? Nobody learns how to ride a bicycle without falling, and your job as a parent is to say, well, let's make sure that when they're learning to ride a bicycle, they're on a playground and they're not in the middle of the street.
Yep. And you just mentioned something that the healthy work-life balance. So you're talking about your kids. How do you do that? Because I know many founders that have their families, and it's really hard. People can very easily burn out. And so are there any suggestions? Are there things that have come across that have been helpful for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think part of it is you have to choose what's important to you, right? And you can't do everything, right? And so, I mean, I think staying physically healthy is important, but if you're a founder and you're also trying to run a triathlon, do a triathlon and raise kids, and have a rich social life and be on board, right? And it's not going to work, and you're going to do all of them poorly, right? You sort of have to say, okay, my family, it's my family and my company, and then I'll just try and exercise and sleep, right?
I'll squeeze it in somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
Right. And you be kind of, I think, consistency and saying, okay, I think actually that's part of it too, right? I think whether it's your family or your company, right? Consistency is really important, right? Like if they know, okay, person X is going to be available the following hours, then, when they're there, that's what they're doing, right? And they're fully present, right? I think, if you're fully present with your family at dinner and on weekends and homework time or whatever, right? And you're fully present with your company during certain hours of the day. And then I think that works. I think if people always feel like you're distracted and they're battling for your attention, that's not good for anybody, right? And if you find yourself in that position, then you're probably not delegating, or you're doing too many things, right? So, use the fact that you're too busy as a symptom that something's wrong.
I always finish off our conversations here with, what advice would you give your younger self? Anything that comes to mind. It doesn't have to be specific about work. It could just be, life advice, anything that comes to mind.
Yeah, I think a few things, but probably the thing I said earlier, people tend to overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what happens over longer periods of time. And the other thing is, I think I think it's especially hard for people who are sort of technical. Numbers are easy. People are hard, and that's both in a good way and a bad way, right? Like the answer, if I look back over, if you were asking me about Plaxo and you said, what were your revenue some particular quarter, I couldn't tell you. But who did you hire then? I could probably tell you.
Relationships, community.
What relationship? Who made a difference? Who didn't make a difference? Right. That ends up mattering a lot more, right? And investing in people, investing in relationships. Great people will be able to handle multiple pivots. And so don't get so locked into thinking that you're running a company like an algebraic equation, because it isn't. It isn't. So
I love that. That resonates very much with me. I believe in that to the core as well of and part of what we do here with Techstars Alumni is that it's focusing on helping others that are going through the journey, and it always comes back. Never in my life have I not experienced not helping others and somehow not that not coming back, regardless.
Absolutely right. And the person who believes that they can maximize their own outcome and not worry about others is not going to be successful. And then that's too many founders somehow like get this idea in their head that, oh, the reason that Elon Musk was successful or Zuckerberg was successful is because they held on to 70% of the stock. And no,
Absolutely right.
that's not why. Yeah.
I agree. I agree 100%. And that's common. That happens. People make the wrong conclusions on many of the stories and headlines, and it's always so easy. Headlines are they cut things really short. Everything's a one-night success. It was one person who did it all, and to your point, you're like, I was in.
It never is. Yeah, it's always a team, right? And yeah, the press likes to write about the they like to pump up founders, right? And then you end up with these bad situations, right? Where you get you get dysfunctional people, right? Or
glorifying just a human. It can be dangerous because humans are fallible, and everyone.
And it's always the team. It's not ever an individual. And teams that are motivated and work well together, and where everybody brings something to the table and they argue and then they resolve it. That's the real story. And the real story is almost always multiple bad days. There's anyone who's an entrepreneur who can't handle failure shouldn't be an entrepreneur.
That's a good signal. Talking about giving, is there anything that we can do right within our community? What would you like for the founders and our community to take away? Or anything you want to share? Anything that
for decentralized distributed storage that's better, faster, cheaper? Of course, I'd love to sell you something, but no, I think the other thing that is very clear is that being a CEO can be a really lonely, and having other members of your community you can talk to is really valuable. And I think more that Techstars can encourage that post-founding networks, not just for business, but just sort of, hey, is anybody else running into this problem?
Right.
That's really helpful to know that you're not alone, right? And you're bored, you can't really talk to, and some things you can't talk to your team about, right? Having somebody else that you can just be vulnerable with is, I think, really, really helpful.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a great conversation.